Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty interesting today. Unschooling. We're going beyond the usual back and forth and hearing from adults who are unschooled themselves.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Like, what's it really like to learn without a curriculum, without tests or even classroom?
Well, a 2015 study, it's published in the Journal of Educational Alternatives, they tried to answer this question.
Okay.
They interviewed 75 adults
Wow.
who had been unschooled, at least for their last 2 years of high school.
Interesting.
And, they wanted to understand their experiences, the highs and the lows.
So we're not just talking about homeschooling here. This is totally different, where learning is driven by the child's own interests and their natural curiosity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine a childhood where, your passions dictate your learning path.
That's amazing.
This study, it gives us a glimpse into what that looks like, in practice.
Yeah.
And, whether it actually works.
So was there anything in the study that, really surprised you?
One of the first things that stood out to me was that moms were often the driving force
Oh, interesting.
behind the decision to unschool,
Yeah.
especially, when the kids were younger. Why do you think that is?
That's a good question.
I mean, think about it. Moms, they're often the ones who are, really seeing the struggles kids have with traditional schooling.
Right.
They see the pressure and the standardized tests and sometimes this, stifling environment.
Yeah.
And they start to wonder if there's a better way.
Yeah. They're like, there's got to be something else out there
Right, exactly.
that's more in tune with my kid.
Exactly. It's about creating, a more personalized learning experience.
Right.
And, as these unschooled kids got older, this study found that they started to play a bigger role in the decision too.
That makes sense.
Sometimes even convincing their, initially hesitant parents.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. There's even an anecdote about 3 teenagers. They actually used the Teenage Liberation Handbook to, make their case for unschooling.
Wow. Imagine being that passionate about your education.
Absolutely.
That you're like, Mom, Dad, I need you to read this.
I know, right? So, but what did unschooling actually look like day to day?
Right.
Was it just kids running wild, learning whatever they wanted?
I mean, a lot of people think of it that way right now.
I know. Well, the study, it categorized parental involvement into 3 main types.
Okay, let's break that down.
Correct?
Because I'm curious how much structure there actually was.
Yeah, so some parents were completely hands-off,
Okay.
providing a rich learning environment,
Yeah.
but letting their kids direct their own explorations.
Oh, yeah.
Others were, more actively involved. They would suggest resources
Hmm.
or even gently encourage the development of specific skills.
So there's spectrum.
Yeah, there's a range. Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
The study, they gave this great example of a dad who got so into his kids' passions
Yeah.
that he ended up becoming the expert himself.
Wow. I love that.
So it seems like unschooling can become a real family affair.
Right. It's not just about the kid. It's about everyone kind of learning together.
Exactly. But let's address the question that's probably on everyone's mind.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this.
What about socialization?
That's the big one. I
Like,
was like, well, what about their friends?
Right, were these kids isolated from their peers?
Right.
And it's interesting. The study found that the majority of these adults reported having, good social lives.
Really?
Yeah. They weren't shut-ins.
Okay.
They connected through homeschooling groups,
Yeah.
after-school activities, community involvement,
Oh,
even online camps.
wow.
They did it all.
Interesting.
And they also mentioned the benefit of, having friends of different ages,
Oh, yeah.
not just those in their same grade level.
Like in real life.
I know, right? That sounds like great preparation for the real world.
Definitely.
One 19-year-old woman, she even described her home as this, bustling hub of activity with people of all ages and, backgrounds constantly coming and going.
So it's like their home was the center of learning.
It was. It
Oh,
was.
that's amazing.
It really challenges that stereotype of the isolated unschooler.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So let's get to the heart of it.
Okay.
What did these adults say were the biggest benefits of their unschooling experiences?
Consistently, they highlighted the freedom to pursue their passions.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right. Imagine being able to dive deep into whatever fascinated,
Yeah.
whether it was medieval history or computer programming
Yeah.
or creative writing without the constraints of a set curriculum.
That does sound amazing, actually.
Right.
Just to be able to follow your own interests.
Yeah, that must be really great.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I imagine that kind of self-directed learning would make you a pretty independent person. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to figure things out for yourself.
You do. You
So you
do.
can't just rely on a teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many felt that unschooling instilled in them, a lifelong love of learning and a strong sense of personal responsibility.
Which are things that a lot of adults, like, they don't have.
I know, right?
Because they were never kind of allowed to develop those skills.
They weren't. They weren't. They learned how to learn.
Right.
Which is a skill that, transcends any specific subject matter.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of really positive things about unschooling.
There are.
But, okay, it can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Oh, of course not.
What were some of the downsides?
Well, one of the biggest frustrations,
Yeah.
was dealing with judgment from others who didn't understand unschooling.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Right. Imagine constantly having to explain your educational choices, especially when they go against the norm.
It's like the constant explaining would get exhausting.
It would. It would.
Mhm.
And, for some, social isolation was a concern.
Yeah.
Especially those who lived in areas with, few other unschooling families.
Right, so it seems like having, like, a support network.
It's crucial.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
other people who are doing the same thing is
Yeah.
really important.
Absolutely.
But what about, like, the academic gaps? Did any of them feel like they missed out on essential knowledge or skills?
Interestingly, only a small percentage felt significantly hindered academically.
Really?
Yeah, and many were able to catch up quickly in specific areas, when needed.
Okay, so it's not a guarantee,
Right.
but it sounds like it doesn't necessarily lead to major academic deficits.
It doesn't. It doesn't. But you mentioned earlier that there was some, cautionary tales.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. You said that some people actually regretted their unschooling experiences.
Yes, yes. 3 respondents, actually, regretted their unschooling experiences.
Wow, okay.
But it's important to note that these weren't simply cases of, educational failings,
Right.
They were tied to deeper issues,
Oh.
like family dysfunction and parental problems.
So it's more about the family environment than the actual unschooling itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Responsible unschooling, involves creating a supportive
And
and enriching environment
right.
where children can thrive not just academically, but emotionally and socially
Okay, that makes sense.
as well.
So with all that in mind,
Yeah.
would they do it again? After experiencing all this, the freedom, but also the challenges,
Right.
did they find that unschooling was ultimately a positive experience?
Well, the study revealed a pretty compelling statistic.
Okay.
67% of the participants said they would unschool their own kids.
Wow.
Or would strongly consider it.
Okay, so the majority would either do it again or at least think about it,
Absolutely.
which means that for them, the benefits outweighed the challenges.
They did. They did. But I'm also wondering about the parents' perspective.
Yeah, me too.
What was their experience like?
Right, because we've just been focusing on the kids.
We have.
But the parents are a huge part of this too.
Absolutely.
So did they find it empowering, overwhelming,
Right.
maybe a little bit of both?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that the study unfortunately didn't delve into as deeply,
Bro.
But even through the lens of the grown unschoolers' recollections, I think we can glean some insights into what it was like for the parents.
Let's do it. I think it's a crucial part of understanding the whole picture of unschooling.
Okay, let's dive in. So, it's easy to get caught up in the whole philosophical side of unschooling,
Right.
but we need to, talk about the practical stuff,
Yeah, for sure.
the concerns that a lot of people have.
Right, like how do unschooled kids actually do out in the real world?
Exactly.
With jobs and, college.
Yeah, can you really succeed without, that traditional high school diploma?
Right.
Right. Well, the researchers, they actually did a follow-up study
Okay.
specifically to address that.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to see how these unconventional learners, how they navigated higher education and the workforce.
Okay, so did colleges just slam the door in their faces?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, 68%
Wow.
of the study participants, they went on to some form of higher education.
That's amazing.
Community colleges, four-year universities, you name it.
So, a good chunk of them
Yeah.
went on to college.
They did.
But how? How did they even get in without a traditional diploma?
That's a great question.
Because that seems like a big obstacle.
It is. It is. And it speaks to their resourcefulness.
Okay.
Some took the GED.
Right.
Others earned, alternative credentials like the CHSPE,
Okay.
showing that, there are multiple paths.
To prove that you know what you're doing.
Exactly, to proving your academic abilities.
Well, they found ways to work within the system,
They
even though their education, didn't look traditional.
Exactly.
But what about, like, actually succeeding in college?
Yeah.
Was it a huge adjustment for them?
Most reported adapting quite well to college life.
Really?
Yeah, and they attributed their success to,
Yeah.
self-directed learning habits
Right.
and strong time management skills that they developed during their unschooling years.
That makes sense.
Right.
If you're used to, like, setting your own goals
Yeah.
and managing your own time, like,
Yeah.
college might feel less chaotic.
Less chaotic, exactly.
Interesting.
Plus, many had already, spent years passionately pursuing their interests,
Right.
giving them a head start in relevant college courses.
So they already had that foundation.
They did.
Okay, but what about the social side of things?
Yeah.
Did they, like, feel isolated or out of place?
The study found that their social lives were, comparable to their traditionally schooled peers. They made friends, joined clubs, even got involved in, like, student government,
Really?
busting that myth of, like, the socially awkward unschooler.
Right.
Yeah.
So they aced college.
Yeah.
But what about the job market?
Right.
Did their, like, unconventional background hurt their chances of getting hired?
Actually, the results were, quite encouraging.
Okay.
The vast majority were employed,
Mm-hmm.
many in fields directly related to their passions.
Wow.
And they were often described as, highly self-motivated, independent, resourceful
That's great.
qualities that, many employers value.
Yeah. Those are good qualities to have.
Absolutely.
So they didn't just, like, survive.
Right.
They thrived.
They did.
It seems like those years spent exploring their interests
Yeah.
actually gave them an edge
They did.
in finding fulfilling work.
Exactly. Unschooling, allowed them to develop unique skill sets
Right.
and a strong sense of initiative, which are increasingly valuable in today's job market.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
But let's be real. It couldn't have been all, like, smooth sailing
Of course.
for everyone.
Right.
Did the study mention any challenges they faced?
Yeah, of course. It wasn't a perfect path for everyone.
Okay.
Some found the transition to a more, like, structured environment,
Mm-hmm.
whether in college or a traditional workplace, to be initially jarring.
Yeah, I can see that.
What about
After
the-
years of setting your own pace,
Yeah.
it could be tough to suddenly have deadlines
Exactly.
and external expectations.
Exactly.
And I imagine for those who hadn't, focused on specific academic skills
Right.
during their unschooling years,
Yeah.
like math or writing, there could be some catching up to do.
Absolutely.
So it's important to remember that, like, unschooling doesn't mean neglecting those essential skills,
it doesn't.
but finding ways to, integrate them
Well-
into a child's natural learning journey.
Absolutely.
It's about being thoughtful and making sure there's, like, well-rounded development,
It is. It is.
even if it doesn't look like, traditional schooling.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The study also touched on something really interesting.
Okay.
The impact of unschooling on career choices.
Uh-huh.
It seems like many of these individuals
Mhm.
ended up on what you might call non-traditional career paths.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what kinds of careers?
Well, a lot of them became entrepreneurs, artists,
Mm-hmm.
freelancers.
So, like, less traditional.
Yeah, less traditional, more, kind of forging their own path.
Right.
And I think this speaks volumes about the entrepreneurial spirit that's fostered by unschooling.
Yeah, because they're used to figuring things out for themselves.
Exactly.
Right. They're used to, like,
All right.
taking initiative and being creative and, like, problem solving.
They are. They were used to taking initiative, solving problems creatively,
Yeah.
thinking outside the box.
And those are really important skills to have
They are.
in any career, really.
Yeah.
But especially if you're, doing something entrepreneurial,
Especially.
it's fascinating how unschooling, while seeming, unconventional,
Right.
might actually be preparing individuals for the future of work,
Go ahead.
where those skills, adaptability, and a passion for lifelong learning are so key.
It really raises some interesting questions about how, traditional education
Right.
could evolve to better prepare students
Yes, for sure,
You know,
to be successful in that kind of environment.
for this ever-changing landscape.
But before we go too far down that road,
Yeah.
let's circle back.
Okay.
To those who did face challenges transitioning into higher education or traditional jobs,
Right.
did the study offer any suggestions for support?
They did.
Okay.
The researchers, they emphasized the need for, bridge programs, tutoring, apprenticeships, and mentorship programs
Okay.
tailored to the unique needs of unschoolers.
Okay, so like recognizing that they might need some extra help
If you act.
in those areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about smoothing the transition.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that success comes in many forms.
Right.
It's not just about grades or diplomas
Right.
or climbing the corporate ladder.
It's about finding what you're passionate about
Absolutely.
and being successful in that.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a love of learning,
Right.
fostering independence,
Uh-huh.
empowering individuals to, create fulfilling lives on their own terms.
Yeah, and I have to admit,
Yeah.
throughout this whole discussion, I've been wondering about something. Okay, so we've talked about all the amazing things these grown unschoolers have accomplished,
We have.
but I keep thinking about the parents,
Yeah.
Like, what kind of impact did this whole unconventional approach have on their lives?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that, often gets overlooked.
Right.
While our main study focused on the unschooled individuals,
Uh-huh.
there were definitely some hints about the parental experience.
So give me the behind the scenes.
Okay.
Were these parents constantly stressed out,
Yeah.
second guessing themselves, running around like chickens with their heads cut off?
It's interesting because the study suggests it was, more nuanced than that. Remember, the researchers interviewed the adults who were unschooled,
Right.
not the parents directly,
Okay.
but we can still kind of glean some insights from their memories.
So what were those insights? What was it really like for these parents to
Yeah.
go against the grain?
To embrace this radically different approach to education.
Yeah.
Well, remember how we talked about mothers often being the ones who were the driving force
Right, to make that initial decision.
behind the decision to unschool?
Mm-hmm.
The study suggested that this often stemmed from a deep desire for a more connected family life and a real concern for their child's well-being.
It makes sense if you're seeing your child struggling in a system that's, not working for them.
Not working.
You're going to look for alternatives.
You are.
Especially if you think there's a way to prioritize both learning AD family.
Exactly.
You don't have to choose one or the other.
You can have both.
Right. And for many of these mothers,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about opting OUT of traditional schooling. It was
Right.
about embracing a whole different way of being in the world.
Okay.
One that valued curiosity and self-direction
Yeah.
and a more holistic approach to learning.
Not just for their kids, but for everybody.
For the whole family. Exactly.
That's pretty radical.
It is. It is.
But did they find it empowering,
Yeah.
or did they just feel overwhelmed?
It seems like it was a combo of both.
Okay.
On one hand, imagine the sense of liberation.
Yeah.
No more homework battles, standardized tests, rigid schedules.
That sounds pretty good.
It does. It does.
Yeah. They had more time and flexibility to connect with their kids, pursue their own interests,
Right.
create a family life that really reflected their values.
So there's a lot of freedom there.
There is.
But I imagine there were moments of doubt too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Especially when they were getting, criticism from family or friends
Yeah.
who just didn't get it.
Yeah. The study talked about the social stigma these families often face.
Right.
They had to constantly, defend their choices.
Yeah.
Reassure others that, their kids weren't just running wild.
No, they're actually learning.
They are learning.
Yeah.
And I bet that got old quickly,
Yeah, I can imagine.
especially in the early days of unschooling when there weren't as many resources or
Right.
support networks available.
So it was probably even more important parents to find each other
To connect, yeah.
and connect with each other.
It was crucial for these parents to connect with other unschooling families.
Right, to have that support system.
Yeah, whether through homeschooling groups, online forums, conferences,
Right.
having that community, that sense of shared understanding,
Yeah.
made a world of difference.
It's like having your tribe,
It is.
the people who get you
Exactly.
and what you're doing,
Exactly.
especially when it's something that's, not the norm.
Right, right. But, beyond those social challenges,
Yeah.
there were practical ones too.
Right, because unschooling requires parents to be much more actively involved.
You're right. It's not just about letting kids do whatever they want.
Right.
It's about, becoming a learning facilitator, a resource guide,
Yeah.
a mentor,
So not a traditional teacher,
not a traditional teacher.
but still a guide
A guide, yeah.
on the side.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is. It is. So how did these parents, like, find that balance
Right.
between supporting their kids' interests
Yeah.
and making sure they were developing, those essential skills?
Because they still need those.
They do. They do.
Right.
The study suggested it was, an ongoing process of learning and adaptation.
Okay.
Some parents were more hands-off,
Right.
trusting that, their kids would naturally gravitate toward what they needed.
Yeah, like they'll figure it out.
They will.
Yeah.
Others were more, proactive,
Right.
creating learning opportunities, offering resources, gently guiding.
So there's no one right way
There isn't.
to be an unschooling parent.
No.
It's about finding what works for your family
Exactly.
and being open to, like, adjusting along the way.
It is. It is. And it requires a fundamental shift in mindset.
Okay.
Letting go of that idea that parents are, like, solely responsible for,
Yeah.
filling their kids' heads with knowledge.
I have to teach them everything.
I have to teach them everything.
Right.
Unschooling embraces the idea that children are,
Yeah.
naturally curious and capable learners.
Right.
And that with the right support, they can direct their own learning journey.
Which is pretty amazing when I think about it.
It is.
Like trusting in your child's ability to learn
To learn.
and providing that space for them to flourish.
Yeah, and for many of the families in this study,
Yeah.
it seems like that trust really paid off.
Right.
They saw their kids blossom into these, like, self-directed, passionate learners
Right.
who were, prepared for adulthood.
That's what we all want.
It is.
So it sounds like, unschooling,
Yeah.
it's not a one-size-fits-all solution,
It's not.
but it offers a really compelling alternative
It does.
to traditional education.
It challenges us to rethink what learning can look like
Yeah, for sure.
and who's responsible for it,
Yeah. And maybe it inspires us to think about how we can incorporate some of those principles
Right.
into our own lives.
Exactly.
Even if we're not, ready to completely ditch traditional schooling.
Can we foster more self-directed learning, embrace curiosity, and create space for passion
Those are great questions.
in ourselves and the children around us?
Yeah.
Those are questions worth pondering.
So until next time,
Yes.
keep exploring, keep questioning,
Keep learning
and keep diving deep into this fascinating world
of knowledge.
of knowledge and ideas.
I'll see you next time.